All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our weekly podcast, First United Methodist Church of Loomis. And before we even get started, we just had a long conversation with Jane DeLury. For those of you at the church who know her, she came on to talk to us today about our reconciling ministry and the history of the church. And it's a long episode today, but we don't care.
Because worth it.
She was great. She was absolutely great. And
she is such a pioneer woman. Like, I knew she was super involved in it, but she was the pioneer.
Yeah.
Becoming reconciling.
Like, behind the scenes. Things done. She amazing.
So after we get through the announcements and everything, we will plug that into the conversation. But wow, it was good stuff. It was really good stuff today. But today is Friday, and I actually took the day off because it's Memorial Day weekend, so we had time to talk today. And by the way, my name is Ray, and we've got Melanie across from me. She's our deacon of Christian education, and we got Allison, our senior pastor. And I am so happy I just have the day off.
Yay!
I took yesterday off too because we had John L. Hooper's memorial service at the church. For those of you who could be there, it was a beautiful service.
It was.
It would have been her 75th birthday. But I was there at noon, and then I got home last night about 8:30, 9 o'clock. So because we had choir rehearsal last night as well. Our beloved choir director, Martin Beal, was supposed to sing yesterday, but he is sick. He came down with another case of COVID. And bless his heart, he is doing a little bit better today, but I don't expect him to be with us on Sunday either. And
that's a good bless his heart, right?
It is a good bless his heart.
Okay. There's two different kinds.
The whole Southern thing of bless your heart, it's a difference in tone. Like bless, oh my gosh, bless your heart is more of a.
When you two say that, I kind of go, huh?
But if I go, oh bless your heart, it's a whole different tone. But so last Sunday we had Senior Sunday, and Sydney Herder was just absolutely amazing. She is so bubbly, and she is. I'm like,
she's wonderful.
I just want to hire her now. Whenever she gets out of college, I want to go ahead and hire her now for whatever business I have in 4 years, just because otherwise I will never get her. I won't be able to afford her.
I know. She's shooting to the moon.
She is. And I don't even know what she wants to be. I forgot what she said she was going to be in college for.
Economics.
Okay.
Yeah, but with a social justice slant.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Like she wants to fight for those in a whole bunch of different social justice arenas. So
wow, we definitely need that.
Yeah,
definitely need that. But it was a great service. We had a lot of stuff going on. We had the scripture from Luke 24 about the ascension of Jesus, and Allison, you had a great sermon. We talked a little bit with Jane. How your sermon talked about Jesus ascending to heaven, scars and all, and the importance of the physical body as well as the spirit. So I thought it was really good. Anything else you want to share on that?
No, I mean, it's just, I think we tend to minimize that or want to kind of whitewash it and say, oh yeah, he, ascended and everything was fine. And it's like, no, he made the point of ascending with his scars, saying our bodies matter.
Yeah. That was a great sermon and a great service. And it went a little bit longer than normal, but it was great. And we closed. Okay. We closed with, I was there to hear your mourning cry.
And everybody was crying.
Everybody was crying. I was trying to sing through that last verse, and I started choking up. I was like, "Oh, okay." I forget. We only do that song every once in a while, and that song, yeah. And of course, Jerry's singing "Here's Hopin'" at the end, and
so good.
So great service all the way around. Yeah, great service all the way around. I was really happy to be a part of it. So this Sunday. Quick reminder, it is Pentecost Sunday, and it's celebrated as the birth of the church. And we're reminding everybody to wear red. I actually I was telling these ladies, I actually put a reminder on my calendar Sunday morning at 6 a.m., wear red today. So
Yeah, my backup is I have a red stole. If I forget to wear red, you will see the red.
well, there's these really nifty little gadgets that fit in your pocket, and they will
I can
they
do
you can put
reminders.
reminders on there. Who knew?
I
So
won't check in the morning.
fancy.
I know, but
I won't check my phone in the morning.
this is more technology than went to the moon.
It's true.
The technology in this device used to fit in like 5 huge rooms, and now it
Yeah.
fits in your
It's
pocket.
crazy.
Well,
So
there are things I
Crazy.
can do on my phone I can't even do on my laptop.
I know. And
I'm just like, forget the laptop. I might as well just have a phone.
I bought James a new
Yeah.
Samsung Galaxy S23, I think, and I think we paid like $900 for that thing. It's more than I paid for the laptop I have that I use for work.
Yeah.
So it's wow. So anywho, it is Pentecost Sunday. So we talk about Pentecost. We have Acts 2, 1 through 21, which is a long scripture this week.
And Stu is our liturgist, and there's a lot of places and
He thanked me yesterday. He said, thank you.
Yeah.
For giving me that scripture.
Parthians, Medes, Elamites, residents of Mesopotamia, Mesopotamia,
Yeah.
Judea, Cappadocia, Pontus.
yeah. I said to Stu, well, first I texted him and I said, I hope you're still speaking to me after I sent you the script this week. And I said, just say it loud and proud. Nobody knows if you don't pronounce it correctly. So,
Well, and what I've learned in
Stu.
Palestine, we don't say anything correctly anyway.
No,
Right.
no, we
Like
don't.
we say Emmaus, and Palestinians call it Emmaus.
Yeah.
Uh-huh,
And of course, I'm from the South. We don't speak English very well anyway. So seriously, I moved to California. It was like, what did you say? What was what? And then years after I moved here, my mom would come visit, and everybody be like, "What is she saying?" And I would have to translate. So I consider myself bilingual,
Right? Southern and
and normal English.
Yeah, you speak my language.
Yep. It is Pentecost Sunday, so we're red. The choir's doing an anthem we haven't done in years and years and years called "Come Build a Church" by Ken Medema. Fun piece, and I was really worried about it because with Martin being sick, we're not expecting him on Sunday. But the choir and I ran it last night at choir rehearsal, and they knocked it out of the park. That's gonna be fine. Anything you want to share, Allison, about your sermon coming up this week?
No.
No, I'm still writing.
Well, we have to get through. We have another memorial service
tomorrow.
Tomorrow, so
Yeah.
no.
I'm singing 3 different solos for that tomorrow. So
you're going to do a good job.
And for those of you who might know, we were supposed to have a concert. Martin and I were going to be doing a concert on Sunday night at Chautauqua Playhouse in Carmichael, and that is being rescheduled due to his illness. We were talking about doing it without him, but he was such an integral part of that concert. It was his baby to begin with. And when he got sick, we were like, we have to cut like probably a third or more of the numbers because he was participating in so much. So we were like, no, let's just wait. So more to come on that. We're looking at some dates in late July or August. So
it's going to be fun.
Oh, it will be. We had rehearsal earlier this week before Martin got sick, and it sounded amazing. Absolutely amazing. I was blown away because those folks they're all trained. Every single one of us are trained singers. And putting those voices together, we had Rachel Songer, who's a local singer. Some of you may have seen her in shows or heard her. She's a voiceover artist. She's just absolutely amazing. And Robin Fisher, no relation to me, by the way, who she does all this stuff. I believe she's a music instructor at Sacramento State University. But her voice, she's wow. And then, of course, everybody, you've heard Martin sing. And then there's another person, Owen Meyer, who's also a music educator at Natomas Charter School. And we just, it was like, wow, this is amazing. So it's going to be good. I can't wait. Although I have to say it was a little bit of a relief this week with everything else going on. did not have to do it.
I wondered if you all might feel that way because we've been crazy at church and work has been crazy. And
yeah. So really quick, we'll go through some announcements. Yes, this is going to be a long episode today, but we have Memorial Day is this weekend. So we have to definitely take a moment and remember those who gave their life in service of our country. It's very important. They gave the ultimate sacrifice. And I know some people talk about celebrating Memorial Day. I look at it more as a remembrance of those people. Mm-hmm. May is special offering for Roseville Food Kitchen. So if you want to donate to that, please make checks to the Loomis FUMC and put in the memo line Roseville Food Kitchen. We are closed. The office is closed for Memorial Day, and the food pantry, they'll all be closed on Monday, May 29th. We have a celebration of life coming up on Sunday, June 4th for Leanna Glende at 1 p.m. That's after church on Sunday, the 4th. I think that's really all the highlights. Melanie, do you have anything you want to share for the youth?
No, we've talked about it, and well, yes, I do. You know, I can't shut up about the kids. We had our first confirmation class this past Sunday night. Those kids are amazing. They're so good, so inquisitive. They had so many questions. The hands just kept going up. I couldn't keep track of who was raising their hand first. So I'm super excited to kick it off. We had a great discussion. They are smart and inquisitive and thoughtful, and it's fun. Yay.
Yay. Sunday, June 4th is our Reconciling Sunday, which is why we had Jane DeLury on today to talk about the history of the Reconciling Ministries network within our church. And I think the history of that is very fascinating and important. So I'm going to be speaking on that Sunday. The choir will be singing, the band will be playing, Jane will be speaking. Yeah, and then I know a couple of you are going to be heading out to do work at the Pride Parade. We have a booth there this year, so all important stuff for reaching out. And that's all the announcements that I have. Allison, do you have anything you want to share?
No, I mean, just reiterate what you and Melanie have said. We have a lot going on.
Yes, we do. The choir is going to be taking our summer break after the service on the 11th, so. That's going to give me and Martin a couple months of no rehearsals, which I'm kind of excited about. I miss my choir every summer, but those of you who don't know, I started a new responsibility at work. And this Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I worked 36 hours those 3 days this week. So it's been a little bit crazy. I think that's it then. We're going to pause here. And we're going to put in our conversation with Jane. And I think you will all be blown away. So I'm just going to bring that in. All right. So today we have Jane DeLury. And I've known Jane since I've been at the church. I've been here 10 years now. And her husband used to play in the band with us in the celebration team, John. And have been active members of the church for I want to say decades. I know at least 20 years. How far back do you go, Jane?
1983.
Wow. So, 40 years this
40
year.
years.
Yeah.
Wow.
We came when our kids were little and they're in their 40s now.
Wow.
And can I just say that Jane's kids and grandkids are so fabulous, just like Jane and John. They are amazing humans.
Thank you. You can say that.
Yeah. And we miss seeing the grandkids.
Yep.
And we found out probably 4 years ago that we have mutual friends outside of the church that we didn't know. Mickey King. I've known Mickey since 1998. When we used to be involved at the same theater company, Capitol Opera, which was back then a different company. But
and her husband Brian.
Yes, and Brian was my director at my very first show at that theater. So so that was kind of cool to find out because Mickey is one of my favorite people. I haven't seen her in probably 20 years. But she was just amazingly kind, and I've been to cast parties at her home, and just a very sweet person. So, but Yeah, and I've actually reached out to her and said we should get together. So it's been way too long. But we have Jane with us today to talk to us about the history of the reconciling effort at Loomis First United Methodist. That happened about 4 or 5 years before I got there. And honestly, it's one of the reasons I am at Loomis First United Methodist, because when they were looking for a pianist for as an accompanist for the chancel choir, a friend of mine saw the ad on Craigslist. For anybody who still uses Craigslist, I haven't used it in years, but they said, "Hey, you've been talking about getting back into playing, and you wanted to kind of walk away from theater because that's a big time commitment. That was way too much time. Here's something, and you grew up Christian, you know the music, you can play it." I said, "Well, I don't know, the whole we don't like gay people thing kind of stuck in my head."
A little bit of a problem.
Yeah. So I actually reached out. I answered the ad, and I talked to Mark Nelson back then. And he said, "Oh, we voted about 4 years ago to become a reconciling congregation. I think you would really like it here." And that got the ball started. So do you want to talk, Jane, about how that process worked, the history of it? I know it happened in 2007, 2008. There was like a whole effort to educate people and talk about different perspectives, and I'll let you speak to that.
Okay. Yeah, that's really when we started. Well, I have to go back a little bit. Really, in 1990s, we started kind of having more of an emphasis as the conference started having more attention to the issue. And I was a lay representative to the annual conference for a couple of years during the 90s, and tried to bring back. I was also chairman of adult ed at that time. See, you don't even know this, some of you, do you?
No.
and so I really, being an educator, I felt a responsibility to having that opportunity to go to annual conference to bring that information back. So we developed the adult education curriculum around what happened at annual conference. And it was a lot of social justice issues and different issues, but some of them around the inclusion of the LGBT population. So that's when it really started. In 1999, for opening to the church, I taught a class called Claiming the Promise, and it was a class offered by the Reconciling Ministry Network, which I'll mention in a minute. And we had about, it's one of those things, we'll offer it, we'll put the chairs out, will they come?
Mm-hmm.
And we had 30 or 40 people there for, I think it was a 6-week class. And that was a really first introduction for a lot of people. And what was so great, there was a wonderful, wonderful elder member of our church who came and was pretty conservative. And, we didn't know what was going to happen. And he said, I don't know anyone gay. I don't know what this means. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? I know that you do know people who are gay right in this church. And, you don't know that. But so that's where we kind of started with all of that. And then in 2007, there was an incident in the Greater United Methodist Church that a church, I think maybe South Carolina, had a member who had been involved in the church, sang in the choir. And when he wanted to become a member, they denied that membership because he was gay. And the Judicial Council, let's look to see what the official name of that was. But anyway, the council of the church upheld that decision. And we immediately kind of gathered a group together at our church and said, I don't want people to think that's who we are. Mm-hmm. And so we put a notice in the Loomis News and a couple of places that we thought reached out to say, we're not in agreement with that. And that's not who we are. So that's really what started it. So a group of us from that said, let's get together and find out what we can do to really make who we are known. And we considered that our church was already reconciling. And a lot of people said, why do we have to do something? We're an inclusive church. And that goes back to our history. Mm-hmm. For those of you who don't know, our church was originally a Japanese Methodist church. And during World War II, every member of our church was interned. And the church was boarded up for 2 years. And when those people came back in 1945 or whatever, it wasn't very long before they made the choice to be inclusive and be sure to know that the Caucasian people and whoever in the community was welcome to their church. And they opened their doors. And some of the members whose families are still in our church were the first to walk through those doors as the minorities. So our doors opened very early in our history. And we felt that that was our responsibility to continue that heritage in what was needed now. There's only one group in the United Methodist Church that's excluded. It's a very inclusive denomination, except for that community of the gay community, including transgender folks now. So we got a group together, and I'll never forget, on a Sunday in June in 2007, I stood in front of the church, and I can laugh at this because it was kind of like I had no authority to do this, really, I guess, and said, we're going to start this. And a year from now, we're going to take a vote to make a public statement that we are a reconciling congregation. And what a reconciling congregation means is there's a group in almost every denomination has some group that's working toward inclusion. And the Methodists happened to come up with the name of reconciling. And there's a whole history behind that. But anyway, so it's an organization within the United Methodist Church who works strictly on this issue of inclusion. And our feeling was, the people who were saying, why do we have to do this? We're including. But I know from people who have the experience of having families, a two-mom family, I have a close friend who's told me, I take my kids past churches that say all are welcome to find a church that tells me what that means. That means that my kids aren't going to go into a church to hear them find out that they're wrong to have two mommies. Yeah. And you're welcome to be here as long as you buy into that. So we felt like we wanted to really make the statement that you're safe here, and we love you for who you are. We don't love you and then ask you to change. This is who we are as a church. So we decided that we would take a year. I had gone to some conferences in advance and asked the question, how do you do this? How do you make this switch? And people said two things that I heard. Actually, the guy who gave me this advice, I just saw the other day, is still on the Reconciling Conference, and I thank him. But he said, take at least a year. Don't rush this. Give people a chance to figure it out and process. No, people aren't in the same place. You got to give it time.
Right.
And so we're going to really try to do this right. The other thing was, he said, don't take a vote until you're sure you got it. Now, who in the world knows they have the vote for sure, ever? I mean, you do your best and then you pray. But so that's what we started out. And we formed a group. People just volunteered. We ended up with, 8 to 10 people that met regularly. Maggie McNaught was our minister at the time. And this was a lay group, so she attended some of the meetings, but it was really a lay driven group, the members of the church, not the leadership, the hired leadership, the staff. Okay, so what we found out from the reconciling ministry team, that to become a reconciling congregation, that's the term we got, was three things. And the first thing was to create a statement that was real clear about what our church represented, and make that public, to be on our letterhead, to be posted on our church, to make that statement public, so anyone who came in could be really clear. The other thing was to be involved. I'm going to look so I get these right. To be involved with the Reconciling Network. They would be our resources, and they would be kind of our overall body, and that we would have a public statements on our sign, on our letterhead. We just became public with this. And the last thing was that we would support the Reconciling Ministry Network. But the biggest thing was to just take a public statement that this is who we are, and make that public and continue to do that. So it doesn't sound like a big deal, but we did a lot of work to get to that point. So we started deciding what we were going to do. And we started out with, to be a reconciling member, you can do it all by yourself. if someone listening here says, this is what I want, but my church isn't doing this, you can do that. You can become an individual reconciling member. And there's a website for the reconciling. It's I'll just RMN, capital as a network, rmnetwork.org. And if you go to our First United Methodist Church of Loomis website, it's there. So you can go back and refer to that. And that'll give you that. So we asked the admin council to support us by giving us a little bit of money. And then we started researching, what do other churches do? What does their statement look like? And our first step was to use our own means of communication, which is, at the time was the Scroll, which was a printed weekly newsletter. And so we started putting information in there, question and answers. The Reconciling Network was really helpful. This is what they were doing. They were helping churches do this. And they were really helpful. So we started the whole process. And we asked the ministers to include in their sermons at least once a month some reference, a song, a prayer, an example in a sermon, story, something that referred to reconciling, so people could get comfortable with the culture. We had some guest speakers. We decided we would bring in guest speakers, and we had awesome Randy Miller. Those of you that are familiar with the history in the Methodist Church, Randy Miller has been awesome. Our present organizer for this region, Izzy, was here. Local people outside the church, a couple who now have a movie about their life, Pat and Barb, were here.
Oh, yeah, I remember them speaking. They were amazing.
And
they're still active. I follow them on Facebook as well.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, Barb was just this past Sunday. Roseville had their Reconciling Pride Day, their Pride Day, and Barb was there. And yeah, they're awesome. Anyway, so we've had a lot of those people. To have a monthly activity, and this is where it got fun, and develop that mission statement. That's what we decided to do. So I just want to, it was pretty fun to go back and look at my notes on these things of what we did. It was a long time ago, 2007 and 8, between there. And the things we did, I'd just like to share some of those with you. I have a long list if that's, does that sound like, okay. Yeah. So we had an adult Sunday school series that Maggie taught about the 7 troublesome Bible passages. And that's where a lot of the argument comes in, that the Bible says no to this. Yep. And
Melanie did a whole thing a few months ago about the bash.
Yes.
So.
Yes. Same.
Yeah. And if I could jump in real quick, I understand. And Ray, I bet you do too. Like I 110% am all for full inclusion, but I understand the mindset that people come from when they are raised in a conservative community, and you have people who have been taught their whole lives that such, whatever it is, whether it's talking about LGBTQ or any issue, if the Bible says it's wrong, you're led to believe you want to please God, you don't want to burn in hell, it's like all these tactics, that you don't want to step out of line. And so it's a journey to get a person from that place to a place of being able to open up and understand the issues a little more, because boy, fear is powerful.
And the worst thing you could ever do is tell that one of those people that the Bible talks more about divorce than it does about gay people, how bad divorce is. And the most times they've been divorced. So it opens up a whole can of worms, but yeah, I get it. And it's a very literal translation of the Bible, but you kind of some people pick and choose what they want to say is the law, and then they can justify everything else. So
it goes into our culture of like not being comfortable talking about sexuality in general. Our culture is so prudish, that anything having to do with sex, it's like, no, so
no place in the church kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. So it's so important we do those Bible classes to kind of reaffirm what's really happening in those passages. So
and during that series, we had a really good turnout. And during that series, it was kind of fun because Maggie's husband kind of helped her lead it. And he's not ordained. He comes from a pretty academic, historical point of view. But so often, I know myself, I was an adult before I really understood the history in the Bible, of how it was written. I read the words. I had a lot of training, grew up in a very active church, but the history and the meaning going into those, the content of those Bible verses, those troublesome Bible verses, can't be ignored.
Yeah.
Why were those words said? What was happening in the community? So we looked at all of those things and continued, just like Melanie just had that class. I think it's something we just keep having to go back to. And I will mention, if later we had an opportunity to look at what the Book of Discipline said about the rules. And that's kind of interesting too, how that's interpreted. So anyway, so that was one thing that we did. And we had the family I referred to, my friend who's two moms of three absolutely amazing kids, lives down in the Bay Area, and came up and talked about her experience from coming out in the 90s in college to choosing the love of her life and having these three amazing kids. And she talked then about passing the churches that say welcome to find somewhere she knew her kids were safe. And okay, so here's some more things we did. Jackie was with our church at that time. Jackie Courtwright was an assistant pastor and had a very close connection to our Nisei community, our first generation Japanese community. And she worked with them in helping them understand, coming from a mindset and experiences that many of them had not had to ever approach before. Dick Ernst, a former pastor for the Methodist Church and at our church, that any of you that have been around a while know, and if you know him, I know you love him, had become a member of our church. And he was involved in our group as a layperson now, a former pastor, and did some real great work for us in helping us understand. And he helped form a group with the men. We have women's retreats, but at that time they actually decided to have a men's retreat, and this topic came up at the men's retreat, and there was some strong, powerful conversations. And out of that, you mentioned Mark Nelson. Mark kind of said, well, when this retreat's over, those of you who want to come over to my house and we can talk some more. And someone said, well, I can have a group at my house. So they started having small groups just for the men. And same thing happened with the women, where the groups got together. Then we also had where everyone could come. It wasn't separated out, and families had other small groups in their homes just to have a safe place to talk this out and get advice. And there was always someone there that could kind of state good information, like Allison or Melanie or a lay person would do. Right. So we started larger groups, men's groups, women's groups, and small groups of all kinds. We developed kind of a theme for this year called storytelling, and storytelling is just powerful. I think, and we kind of agreed to that would be a safe, good way that as we met, we could tell our own stories and our experience of stories and deal with those. So that was kind of our theme. And our first meeting for all of us came together. Those of us on the committee all shared our stories. Why did we decide to do this? And it was everything from some of our families who had people in the LGBTQ and so forth community, what their stories were. Some of us who came from different places, from our heart, from whatever our experiences were. They were all different. We shared our own stories, and we showed a movie at that time called Coming Out, Coming In, Faith, Identity, and Belonging. And we had a discussion about that. And that was a large group. We had another time when we had a children's night, and we showed a movie, That's a Family, a video. And we had activities for the kids and the parents, and it was just a big family night. But that video was an inclusive video about families. How do you talk to kids? Appropriate for kids as well. We still have that video. We had another night, the Bethany, this wasn't a video. So the Bethany play, Stories of Reconciliation by Pam Aubie. Yeah, Aubie. Was a play she developed for annual conference. And it was so powerful from people who were at annual conference that she agreed to come to our church. And it was a reader's theater presentation, and members of our congregation became the readers. And it was just awesome. You know, it should be everywhere. It should be everywhere. It was an awesome. The scroll had questions and answers. The MYF, the youth group, developed a Jeopardy team and had a Jeopardy night where
That's
they
awesome.
had the questions were all around LGBT issues and what the Methodist Church says about that. And that was really a hoot. That was great. And that really came out of a service project that we took. I was a youth group leader at that time, and we took a group of kids to San Francisco to do service work. But we stayed in a church that was reconciling, and their youth group did a Jeopardy for us while we were there. And we all found out we didn't know very much. I don't know that we had any champion winners, but anyway, they got that idea and brought it back to our church. So they got real involved. The cool thing was, you know, the teachers learned the most. So they did the research and they became, you know, the references for us. So that was a really awesome thing that we did. So anyway, let me see if there's anything else. You kind of get the idea if there's anything unique. Ad Council really sponsored these groups and encouraged them. They were very supportive through this. We had a day at church, a movie day, that we had popcorn after church and showed For the Bible Tells Me So, which is a great video still. Some of these old videos are still really good. So anyway, when we got to the end of this year and had many conversations, and it was a powerful year, Ad Council took a vote and decided kind of the criteria for having a congregational vote. And they decided, first thing we did was we took a survey. This was a crack up. We took a survey and we just sent it out. We asked people their sex, their age, and how many years they'd been a member of our church, or if they were not a member actually. And we had written our statement, and we put the statement in. And the question of the survey was, if our church adopts this statement, could you be supportive? 90% said yes, 8% said no, 2% didn't indicate how it was. And we had 126 returns on that survey. Wow. So, you know, when they say, be sure you got the vote before you do this, we felt like we were in a safe place to do this. So an admin meeting that I'll never forget, they set the goal at 80%. I want to be sure I'm right on that. I think what they said, we had to have 80% of a yes vote to do it. And I went to the board meeting. Greg Feller was the Ad Council president, for the people who have known Greg forever.
I love Greg.
Yeah, he's another one. If you know him, you love him.
Yeah.
And I tried to be real professional and say 80% is too low. And then I started to get really emotional. I said, "Are you telling me that if 79% say yes, you'll turn it away?" You know? And Greg's answer was very calmly, "Oh, ye of little faith," he said. And they kept their 80%. So on June 1st, 2008, Ted, who was the bishop then? Ted Wirtz, the district superintendent, conducted a meeting, and 160 people attended in the fellowship hall. And we had set up some rules. It would be a vote by hand, raising your hand. We were so careful about how it was voted. Everyone saw. And we also agreed that however the vote came out, we would not celebrate. There were going to be winners and losers, no matter, unless it was 100% vote, which we knew it wasn't going to happen. But there were people who said, if we vote for this, there's going to be people who leave the church. And people said, and if we don't vote for this, there are going to be people who leave the church. The point is, most of the people, however this vote goes, are going to stay. And people make changes. Faith journeys need changes sometimes. And we understood that this was going to, this was going to happen. And there was a 91% in favor of adopting the statement and becoming a reconciling church. And was a good day. A few people left the church, for those of you that wonder. A few families made that choice. A few people who voted no on that statement, I know are still in our church, active members. So that's kind of how we got there. Then that was just the beginning, because then this group said, okay, we're not going to just make our statement and put it in the paper and we got to live it. How are we going to live this? And by then, the United Methodist Church as a whole had taken on the, let's see if I get this in order, the theme kind of, which is out on our banner in front: open hearts, open minds, and open doors. And we wanted, because every Methodist church has that, but we wanted to live it. We wanted people to see we're not just going to open our doors. Our hearts are open and our minds are open, and that's who we are. So we started then working toward, what do we do now? So we continued some of these same kind of things that we wanted to continue that. So that's really all these years later where we still are, is trying to live out the statement. And do we have time, Ray, to read the statement? The statement.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So the statement we adopted was this, and really you'll see some differences in how this might read a little bit different now, because in 2008 there were issues that are really prominent now that weren't then. There are still people coming out. So the First United Methodist Church of Loomis is a reconciling congregation. We are called by Christ, empowered by God to love and serve all God's people. Recognizing the sacred worth and dignity of all persons, we welcome all, regardless of race, age, ethnic origin, gender identity, sexual orientation, physical or mental capacity, education, economic or family status, to full participation in the life and ministries of our church community. We continue to work toward open hearts, open minds, and open doors. And that, yay, that's okay.
Yeah.
And that statement hangs in the main section of our church, and in other places as a continual public statement of who we are. So just to take a quick, there's a few things that have happened since then. Do you want me to go on with that?
Sure.
Okay, just a couple of things. The way the church is structured has changed since then, but there was a time when we all became teams and underneath ad council. And so we were the reconciling ministry team, and we had to develop a charge. What did that mean for our team? And so we developed what our job was, and what authorities we had, and we operated kind of with that, which was kind of an addition of how our team worked. And that was in 2011. In 2014, there was another action that we took, and it was around a work of biblical obedience. There were people in the church that said, to not be reconciling is not being obedient to really what the Bible was saying and intending, and looking at those Bible verses. And how can we as individual churches say, we see the Bible this way and we will be obedient to that and what that means? And there was a reference made through this process to the Book of Discipline, which is kind of our rule book. And it took 4 different statements in the Book of Discipline, and specifically that are used negatively, that we feel are positive. One statement says, inclusiveness denies every semblance of discrimination. So if you can say you're inclusive, you're denying, that has to deny all discrimination. That's the point. We affirm that all persons are individuals of sacred worth, created in the image of God. Maybe the most important statement in the Book of Disciplines, in my opinion. All persons, regardless of age, gender, marital status, or sexual orientation, are entitled to have their human and civil rights ensured. That's in the Book of Disciplines.
Yep.
And the other one, we implore families and churches not to reject or condemn lesbian and gay members and friends. So our church took the stand that we would sign the statement that we were declaring an inclusive that we were declaring as to be an inclusive church and following the book of disciplines. Now, the big things that it meant for our church, this was a big deal, because what it did was it gave permission. I'm trying to look just exactly how it's signed here, but it gave us that we declare that no one will be denied the services of our church because of sexual orientation. This includes the use of the property for same-sex marriages and holy unions.
And I was here when that happened. I remember what a big deal that was. And Maggie and I talked about that on multiple occasions. So
yeah, 2014.
Yeah.
And that the ministers should not expect any repercussions from performing services for whomever were creating their love and their life their life commitment.
That was at the time where there were a lot of ministers in the United Methodist Church nationwide that were being had repercussions because they were participating in same-sex marriages.
Yeah. So and it was 1999 when the service at the community service in Sacramento took place, and it wasn't even a marriage. It was just a statement of what was the terms we used then, of union, or I can't remember.
Civil union, or
it was even something less than that. Anyway, where 1,000 people attended. The people not inside, I was lucky enough to be inside at that, but formed. I just met a guy last Saturday at the Pride thing in Roseville who was on the outside because his partner was a Sacramento police officer, and he could not be seen publicly. He couldn't be out.
Oh, wow.
So his partner stood across the street, and he formed that group outside, held hands and formed a circle around the building of safety and love while that service was taking place. And there were, I wish I had looked this up before we talked, but I want to say, a lot. 17 or 27 or 67, I don't know, a lot of ministers who were brought up on charges for just being there.
In the 60s. I want to say it was like 60 something.
Oh, I think you're right. I think it was 60 some. And
wow.
just for walking down the aisle. A cool thing we did at that church, I'm going to shut up after this. Cool thing they did was they asked people in the congregation, and they allowed 1,000 people in, to stand if they same-sex couples, if they had been committed together for 5 years, and people stood. And then they went to, like they do at weddings, the last people dancing, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. And there was people standing. Come on. We were like, it was awesome. It was awesome. Anyway, that's kind of where we are now.
And I think, and sometimes I feel like I share too much about reconciling. But then again, sometimes I think I don't share enough. But when we had our safety training at the church a couple of months ago with Placer County Sheriff, and we were talking about, making the church safe. There's a rash of shootings. Houses of worship have been targeted. And there was somebody in the back made a comment about the rainbow flags out front and the flag immigrants and immigrants welcome, refugees and immigrants. And maybe we should take those down because that makes us a target. And I'm planning to use that example in my talk on Reconciling Sunday, that if we do that, then we've given in. Because if we are reconciling and saying everybody is welcome, that's not something to be ashamed of, in my opinion. How can we say that we're reconciling, we include everybody, but then we're going to take all references of that down because of threats of violence? Back in the day, African-American people couldn't hide their race. They were going to be targeted regardless. And Jane, you're a couple of years older than me. You're probably in your mid 40s. I grew up, when I was born, there were still whites only and coloreds only signs in my hometown. And people think that's all ancient history. And yeah, I guess I'm getting older, so maybe it is. But I still remember some of those, and I was 2 or 3 when those came down. So I think it's something we need to bring up. And I think today, especially because the political atmosphere has become so charged in this country, even in California, that trans people are being targeted, drag queens are being targeted, and we need to make a stand and choose a side. I don't see another way around it. And if that makes us targets, we just need to be better at protecting ourselves, but we have to bring attention to these issues. So,
Preach, brother, preach.
yeah. But I'm also in one of those categories. And to me, my marriage with James has been more accepted now than it ever has been. But now it's another community, the trans community. And I hear conversations in the gay community. Why do we have trans people included in the gay lesbian community? And I'm like, why not? They are in they are in need of our assistance, our protection, and our love. So
and they're being targeted.
Exactly. And we have the resources to help. So let's just do it.
We're all trying to live out, we're all sacred children of God. We say that to every child that gets baptized in our church.
That's
you guys who do those services have done it a million times. And every time that is said, back in the day, Jackie used to be nervous when she'd do baptism because she's afraid to stand up and say, we're lying, we're not, I can treat you that way when you get big, So anyway, but it was a perfect example last Saturday at the Pride Day. There were people who talked, and when we talked about our church, you could just see when we're saying, yes, we're very open, and there's just that. And it was kind of like the unspoken was, are you really open?
Yeah.
And I said, when you drive into our parking lot, our rainbow flags are flying. And then they say, oh, I get it.
I've been there. Trust me. I came to this church with a plan of, okay, 2 years. We'll see how it goes. If they are really reconciling, if they're not, if they're really accepting. And I'm still here. So you passed the test.
We're so glad you're still here.
But 25 years before that, I didn't step foot in a church unless it was a funeral or a wedding.
And there's people still, I know people that when as much as they love the people and they trust our church, they just can't do it. It just triggers.
Yeah.
Well, I do want to say, you mentioned next Sunday, the 4th of June, you'll probably say too, is our Reconciling Sunday. One thing that we committed to doing is every year having one Sunday where we kind of revisit this story and celebrate it, to really celebrate it. And so Ray is going to be a speaker next Sunday and tell, I think, a bit of his story and whatever you want to say, Ray.
I'm like I said, I'm focusing on the trans community right now because they need
come
us.
And celebrate. Absolutely. But if you're listening to this at home or wherever, join us on Sunday the 4th and celebrate what's happening there at the corner of Bryce and Barton.
And you're going to be speaking and giving a little bit of the history still.
A shorter version.
Yeah.
And another thing that's happening on the 11th of June is the Pride Parade and the Pride Festival the 10th and the 11th in Sacramento. The parade is on
Sunday,
the 11th. And maybe everybody you see on the screen right now is going to be out there marching. And
I can't. I have to do church that Sunday.
Allison's going to be preaching.
You go to church every Sunday, don't you? That's so weird.
And I'll be there singing, but I'm going to try to. I'm going to try to head over after.
Melanie and I'll sing and preach.
I know. I'm ditching church. Church.
And
I'll take anybody. I'll take anybody who wants to go with me. I have a van that'll hold 7 people, so I'm happy to take anybody.
6, because I'm in that seat in front.
Okay, we have 5 more seats, and I'm happy to take whoever downtown Sacramento.
I'll be heading over after church. So
anyway, so
I want to go back real quick, Jane. You were talking about baptism and the vows that we take at baptism, and one of the vows that we take at our baptism as United Methodists is that we are resisting evil and injustice and oppression in whatever forms they present themselves. It is our baptismal vow. So either adults are taking it for their newborn babies or infants, or before they're confirmed, kids, adults, those are our baptismal vows. So we cannot argue that that's part of the package in being a United Methodist.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yay. Yay.
Well,
We got to live it out. We've got to do it.
You have to live it. I don't see any other way around it. I've talked about this before, that, we're supposed to minister to what we do to the least of us is what we do for Christ. So if we're not treating everybody with dignity and love, feeding the hungry, taking care of the sick, and that includes gay people, it includes lesbians, gays, trans, non-binaries, everybody. And if you can't do that, you have no business calling yourself a Christian.
Well, and Ray, that's why I thought last Sunday's scripture for Ascension Sunday was powerful. That Jesus, ascended, scars and all.
Yep.
And the point is, bodies matter. And what I had in my mind was trans people being targeted because of their body. So it's like our bodies matter, and we have to defend that.
Absolutely.
That was such a good sermon, and that was maybe my favorite sermon of yours. Like, you've preached some really good ones. That one was my favorite.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to move on. This is going to be a long episode today, but I really don't care. I'm happy we're having this conversation. Jane, thank you so much for being with us.
We love you, Jane.
We love you.
I love you all too.
We love you, Jane.
Thank
and
you.
Give our love to Jackie. I know you're at her home right now because she had oral surgery yesterday. So, but give her our
She's
love.
good though. Don't scare everybody.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah, she had some. Everyone loves Jackie, but she had some oral surgery, and so I'm repeating today everything I said yesterday when she was still sedated. So anyway, but she's good. It's good. It's all okay.
Good.
Okay.
All right.
Love.
Thank you. Love you too.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, that was Jane. Wow. I'm still blown away at that whole conversation. And yes, this episode is going to be a long one, but it was so worth that history. A lot of stuff I had never heard before that she talked about how that process went. Maggie and I talked about it when I first got here, but I didn't know to the extent. It was like a year-long process with all these, conversations and classes, and they set a very high bar for passing of the vote. It was just amazing. So, and as we talked about, right now it's the trans community that's being hit really hard, and I think it's a good time for us to look at what our reconciling ministry means and how can we support. So, we're moving into joys and concerns, and I have a few that Sharon sent. Marianne Horton asked for prayers for her brother Rob. He has a severe infection. He had a recent surgery, and he has to have 3-hour infusion treatments every day for 3 months. Keeping him in prayer. The Stackhouse's granddaughter Mina, she's having surgery on her knee in July. She is out of she was the one who's out of the dance competition for the season.
Dancer, competitive dancer, and she's good.
Yeah. Diane Pingree asked for prayers for her workplace in Auburn. Last Friday, a truck ran into the shop.
Yeah, so, I found out a little more about that. There was glass that got sprayed everywhere, and it was a total blessing that the woman who was supposed to be working was sick, and Diane couldn't get there. No one was injured, and there weren't people around, the shop, so everyone was safe.
Wow.
So it was a blessing.
I heard her talking to somebody after church about that briefly on Sunday. So, wow.
What happened?
A truck I don't think there was anything bad, but the truck ran through the window in the shop.
Yeah, because I heard nobody really knew if maybe the person driving had a health emergency or was intoxicated. I didn't hear anything like that, so I don't know.
Yeah.
We got notification that Hugh Hoffman passed away on Tuesday. Please continue to pray for Dorothea and her family. Allison, you had one you wanted to share.
Did I?
Oh no,
Eula.
Ricky. Yeah.
Eula's service. We are still working on a date because no one can get together. People who really want to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So that'll be an update coming up.
Quick update on my Aunt Sandra. She's in good spirits, and she thanks everybody for her prayers. She's told her doctor's appointment's on the 6th, but she's doing well. And my cousin Bill has seemed to fully recover from his overdose. So hopefully we're praying that he'll get some help for his addiction issues. So
Good.
that's all I've got. Anybody else?
Joy's, last week I was talking about Cooper had district track finals, and he kicked butt. I have to say, he kicked some butt at the track finals, and we have several high school kids at our church as well who did high school track and have done water polo and other things, and they're just kicking butt and taking names. They're doing what they love, and that's what's most important.
Yes, that's awesome.
Yes, and Dwayne and Bev Bruce have a 50th wedding anniversary.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that got circulated yesterday.
Wow.
Cool. So they were like 10 when they got married?
Yeah. And their kids have to be 20, right? Yeah.
Right, yeah.
We had at my home last Saturday, we had a cast reunion party for a show that I did 25 years ago, and it was the show that brought me onto the board of directors at the theater company at the time. And I hadn't seen some of those folks since the show closed 25 years ago. And we had a great turnout here, had a lot of fun, and laughed and watched the show and saw how young we were. Of course, none of us have really changed much, but
Did you watch the show again?
We did. We watched it here. Yeah, we watched it
fun.
together and laughed and laughed. And we had quite a few people who had moved out of state, and we had them attend on Zoom, and we shared the video on Zoom.
Fun.
So, yeah, it was good. I had a great time. It was a big joy for me, and I was exhausted on Sunday, but we had a blast. So, unless either of you have anything else you want to lead us in prayer, Allison?
Sure. Just gracious God, thank you for Jane and her history, and thank you for our church community, and all the ways we honestly strive to be a welcoming place for all people. And just thank you for this team of Ray and Melanie and Martin and Office, Sue and Sharon. We just have a great staff, and we just pray that we can continue to do good work. And all these concerns that we lift up, we pray for all who are struggling, whether it's mental health issues, physical issues, or those who are grieving the loss of loved ones. We pray today for Janelle Hooper's family, and what a beautiful celebration of life. So as we go forth, may we continue to celebrate life and love and diversity, and be a community of social justice and compassion for all. Amen.
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 So we have a lot going on for the next few weeks, and we really would love to see you. Come join us in person, online. The LoomisMethodist.org website will be flashing across the screen, and you can find all of the information there. So flashing.
Spirit fingers.
And
Jazz hands for Jesus.
Spirit fingers.
We apologize for the long episode today, but sorry, not sorry. Necessary. Great conversation. So thank you all. And I will see both of you tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
okay.
I'll see you Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah. Tomorrow I'll be on the soccer field.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh no.
Watching, not playing. I'll be watching.
Yeah, and tell him didn't he get a first place or second place in something?
In track, his relay got first place, and
he got
they almost beat the school record, his relay. Oh. Then he got second place in the 200, and then he placed in long jump, but he doesn't know what yet. They're trying to figure that out. And then he did hurdles, and I don't know what he got because there were so many heats. I don't know where he stacks up. He's supposed to find out either yesterday or today, but he didn't know yesterday.
Wow.
Yay.
Wow.
He's fast. He started running when he was 11 months old, and he has not stopped.
Maybe that's what I need to do, because he's thin. I need to be thin again. Yeah, I'll just go jump a few hurdles. And then I'll see you when you visit me in the hospital. All right. I will talk to you later. Love you both,
right.
and have a
Love you
great
too.
weekend.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.